Back
Yep.
Pocket Comics are headed up by two writers, Richard Davidson, and our guest here today, Stephen Young, based in
Hey, Chris.
Portadown, about 24
Yep.
miles southwest of Belfast. Stephen and Richard have produced a dozen books straddling genres in cooperation with a broad range of artists.
Yep.
Stephen Young, welcome to the Drew and Luke podcast.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
So that we keep the casual listener, I thought it might be fun if we got into a speed review of Back Pocket Comics.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read out the title of one of your books, and I
Yep.
want you to hit us with a quick sale or log line on that book. No
Yeah,
pressure.
this should be entertaining.
So elevator pitches only.
Oh yeah.
Black Spot.
Yeah, Black Spot was pretty much inspired by One Piece. Massive fan of One Piece. So I wanted to do my basically Western take on it. And it's a pirate-based story, obviously. Kind of these Viziers, which are like the best of the best pirates, have been betrayed by one of their own, and he intends to bring back this basically demigod that tried to destroy the world years ago. And their crews are destroyed, their ships are destroyed, and they decide to basically band together and team up on this one Vizier and go and kick his ass, pretty much. And that's what it is, just a fast-paced pirate story right to the very end. No, I don't like to take my time, just straight to the end goal.
That's your baby, Black Spot. Richard is a scripter on the Vim Initiative. How would you pitch that to us?
The Vim for me is it's Richard's very much into his upbeat superhero stories. He always loved all that stuff. But what he actually done with the Vim Initiative is he done it in a non-linear way. So the story jumps from maybe day 60 to day 20 to day 32, and the reader can then piece together what I would like to call parts of the puzzle to figure out how Vim actually got his powers, got his abilities, and kind of come to the conclusion of the story. And it's a three issue miniseries, so it's actually complete now. So it was nice. It was nice getting to see Richard start off from page one to the very conclusion of the story.
With some lovely clear art by the illustrator Slate.
Yeah.
I read that earlier in the week and enjoyed it. Soulforge.
Yes, Soulforge is like a Pokemon inspired one, and then people have actually said it's a bit like the Golden Compass, which I've never seen or read, so I don't know how true it is. But it's basically instead of using animals, people can basically have their souls leave their bodies, and their souls take the form of creatures or animals, and they do battles. So it's kind of like this world tournament where people there'll be a clash of souls, and obviously it's the competition and the winner, and then there's a bit of a twist at the end, which I don't really want to give away just yet.
Pipelines by Richard and Barry O'Sullivan.
Yes, yes, that's just their brilliant work and partnership. Originally, one of the first stories I ever done on my own was Tarik, and it has taken quite a long time between volume one and volume two. So Richard decided that he wanted to do like almost like a tie-in piece. So Pipelines is about a struggle of people from outside Altar, which is where Tarik was set, and how they've survived underground, being hunted by they're basically hunted by other animals, and their struggle to survive and to escape the underground caves and to find Altar, where Tarik takes place.
And Tarik.
Yeah, yeah, Tarik is like a post-apocalyptic warrior story. It like when I was writing it, I had kind of Conan vibes from it. It's just that that dark, gritty kind of warrior-esque style story. But I also like my myth and demons and stuff, so I like to wedge that in whenever I can. So there's obviously undertones about that, and originally it was meant to be 6 volumes, but I'm not quite sure if we'll be doing all six. No, I'll probably three. So I've currently finished two. I need to get it lettered, and then volume three will be the conclusion, I imagine.
That's quite a commitment. Right.
Yeah.
Round
Yeah.
one, well done. Round two, books that you and Richard have written together. The first launch of Back Pocket Comics, The League of Bamdu.
Yes, that was a crazy one actually. Originally, Richard actually came up with the idea of this. So he had, I think it was 16 or 20 pages of like a script put together. And I was like, yeah, that's a cool idea. That's cool. But what if we added this? What if we added this? So what a lot of people who have read it have compared it to is like Assassin's Creed meets Dragon Ball Z. So it's about a league of assassins who obviously recruit from all over the world. And Orion is like the best of the best. He's the pinnacle within their tribe. But he basically finds out that there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, which he was unaware of, which the elders kept from them. And he kind of goes out to seek the truth to find out where he himself came from. And in doing so, yeah, he finds out a lot of stuff. I near gave the end away as like that bit of a terrible elevator pitch. He basically finds out a lot of stuff he didn't want to know and makes enemies with people he once called friends. I think that's the best way I can do that without giving
If
too
you want
much
to hear the
away.
end of that particular pitch by the League of Monday, and Heyman taking the reins, which I read earlier in the week and really enjoyed.
Excellent, glad to hear it. Yes, again, Richard wanted to do a western, and I'll be quite honest, I do not like westerns, comics, movies, anything like that. So I was like, well, I'm not adverse to doing it, but if we're going to do a western, yeah, there has to be some sort of no mythology or demons or something of my influence. So we decided on what I would call a demonic western. Then we found Corferosa, who was the artist, whose style, well, you've read it yourself. His style, I think, just was fantastic for a western. So we we're quite lucky in that regard. And basically, the main character feels during like an ancient Indian ritual, he gets possessed by a demon and it goes back. There's a lot of revenge. Now that I'm saying this over, there's quite a lot of like a revenge of Back Pocket Comics. No, he goes back to the city. No one seeks revenge on the people who have wronged him and the people who are basically trying to overtake his city and his town. And he's trying to basically get rid of the demon himself to appease the demon so he can return back to his family. And I think that's probably the best pitch you're going to get. Richard's a lot
Pretty
better
good.
pitches. I wish Richard was here for the pitches, to be quite honest, Andy.
I definitely got a sense of sort of some of the uglier moments of Deadwood, which if you like those, then Raymond taking the reins.
But see, that was the thing, though. Richard, he came up with certain parts, and then when it came to, well, the bloodier scene, shall we say, he was like, right, we need 6 pages. Stephen, just you do whatever you want for 6 pages. So I got to do, like, obviously, the more fighting scenes and the kind of more, well, I don't want to give too much away, but like the torture scenes and stuff. I got to run rat and kind of do whatever I wanted. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being given free rein to let the blood lie where it lay, you know.
So the most standard aspect of Back Pockets, in my experience, is your ability, you and Richard both as writers, to be hands off when it comes to words on the page. To put it in context, it's not unusual for your books to go 3 or 6 pages without dialogue or captions, sparse. And the result is the illustrator is given full space to show the story. It's a style I didn't see very much in mainstream comic stories. I mean, Larry Hama would write silent comics for G.I. Joe in the 80s. Marvel did a Enough Said month around 2000 with books running without words.
Yeah.
But these things seem to be anomalies in as far as mainstream comics go. And it seems that you are taking on a pretty brave challenge. That's just me. What sort of discussion informs such a story?
Well, to be quite honest with you, when we first done Monday, we found after we had printed and read it a few times, we were thinking between ourselves there might be too much dialogue to a certain extent. You know, we felt we had almost overstated the dialogue. So when we then done Heyman, which obviously we cut it back massively compared to what Monday was. So I think there are certain titles like the likes of Vim and like Tarik and like, well, Black Spot. We've tried to kind of find our happy place in terms of dialogue and stuff. No, I think in terms of the artist, it's one thing I would hate is for an artist that has worked with us to feel like they've been dictated to or they've basically been kept on a leash. I would rather the artist was given the information that we needed on the page and let the artist do their job. No, they're creative types, and to be quite frank, a lot of the time they're going to come up with something better than I could ever imagine. So that's my experience. Like, right, this is the must do's on the page. For everything else, I trust your experience. Go wild. No, do whatever you think. And obviously, you know yourself, having worked in the industry so long, they'll come back with the storyboards. And if there are things you really dislike, you can talk among yourselves and fix it. But a lot of the time, especially like on, well, we spoke earlier about the Jovian effect that I'm working on currently. Andre will come back with stuff on the pages, and it'll just blow my mind. It's like I had never thought in a million years, or he'll discuss, putting in what he called breather panels between things, and it's certainly things that personally I wouldn't have known to do. But he's been in the industry again a long time as well, and he knows how to draw pages better than I ever will. So you just have to let them do their thing and trust them.
We'll get some images out up on, if you're listening to this on Spotify, there's a video version and a YouTube
Yeah,
version too. Um, but you really do go all in on it. It's like, so the classic advice given by the likes of Moore and such is average or under 6 panels a page, under 100 words per page, but you really commit to the other end of that spectrum.
yeah.
And it's, yeah, the results are really clear to see. What is a working relationship between yourself and Richard like?
Oh, Richard and myself have been like best friends for approaching 20 years now. And we've never, believe it or not, when it comes to the comics, we've never actually had any arguments. No, he's one of the few people can tell me exactly what he's thinking and not end up in a full scale argument.
No
So
creative standoffs, no
no, not really. Like no,
hands at
even
dawn.
I think there tends to be jokes with Jags in there, Andy. So like for Monday, he wanted 20 pages, and after I kind of had my way, it ends up I think it's now 240 something pages. So he will joke, no, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but this is what I ended up with. But we've never had any cross words. No, I'm still trying to talk him into going to New York Comic Con. Like that's my I really want to go there and showcase Backpocket Comics, but it's a big gamble, and Richard's not the biggest. He's not into his massive gambles, shall we say? So no, again, I think when you're in a partnership, and especially when you're really good friends, you have to understand where the other person's coming from. And there's no point getting annoyed about it. No, Richard and I have worked together. We've done our individual projects, and we're yet to have a crossword, yet to have a wee hissy fit or anything like that. And I think that's because we both respect where the other person's coming from, and that is the main thing. I think, like, just that respect there.
Yeah, that give and take.
Yeah.
I noticed you did an interview with David Ferguson of Irish Comic News recently, and he asked what the most important thing you learned, and the pair of you both said get an editor.
Yeah.
Get an editor, question your decisions and proofread. And I couldn't agree more. In my experience, an editor not only makes the final work better, it's like having an extra author in to
Yeah.
ease that burden, to assure you that an audience is coming in a leaving the cave now sort of way.
one Hundred
And I
percent.
think some people don't understand that an editor will tell you what you've done right as well as what you could do better. So
Yeah.
is that extra presence part of what drove you to team up as writers based on that existing friendship?
Originally, no, not in the slightest. The reason the whole Backpocket Comics thing started is I was at Richard's house reading a comic, and I think it was Venom versus Carnage, something along those lines. And I said, no, it'd be so cool if you made your own comic. And Richard, being Richard, went, impossible, too hard, can't do it. I would be rather stubborn. So I was straight home, DeviantArt. Once the ball got rolling and Richard realized it was possible to make your own comic, he started working Monday. And literally, Backpocket Comics is all started because Richard basically dared me to make my own comic. And it was just my stubbornness that got the whole ball rolling then. I think the two of us are a good combination in terms of Richard is very feet on the ground, and I would be head in the sky. So when we actually do compromise and meet in the middle, it is probably where we should be aiming to begin with. In terms of an editor, Monday, you've seen the size of Monday. It's over 240 pages, as I said. I think from that point we realized how important an editor might actually be, and we done some work actually for Paul Carroll's story, Turning Road. Sorry,
Paul Carroll is
from Limit Break, and I think it's Dublin.
right.
So they done like an anthology, and he edited everything. It was like after I'd done my piece, I thought, do you know what? It is actually useful to have an editor. So Richard and I had always kind of shared ideas, but not to the extent of I'll send you my scripts. Would you read through it? Let me know what you think. Again, the Jovian effect is probably the first one I have sent Richard and had him actually read through, give feedback. And I would say there's been at least 3 drafts where he said, no, no, this is too linear. You need more twists. Rip this bit out. And as you said, it has been. I actually feel bad not having him as a joint writer because he has saved my ass. I think the story's 100 times better than it was when I first wrote it. So anyone starting off writing comics, even if it's just a friend, get someone to read your draft 100%.
What mistakes do you see from enthusiastic amateur writers, yourself included?
Yeah, well, to be quite honest, I think we'd spoken to the guys at Enniskillen Comic Con at one point about panels and all, and we had said if we were to ever do a panel, it would be the things we've done that you probably shouldn't do. No mistakes we've made that we're willing to hold our hands up and say we were idiots. Do not do this. So again, the first comic we ever made was over 200 pages. Easy steps. Start with an issue, and an issue is probably the best way to go. You know, another thing is I spoke to you before, Andy, back at Enniskillen as well, about we were going on DeviantArt to get artists. It only happened a handful of times, but we were paying the artists up front, and then you never heard from them again. So we lost quite a lot of money, to be quite honest, that way, where people were just ghosting you after you paid them. So I think in terms of actual writing, you need a concise idea. You need this is my solid idea, and then start to break it down. For me personally, I think in terms of a movie, that helps me like play a film in my head and work out what's happening. So that was mine. But the biggest thing I can say, as I said in that last interview, was get an editor. 1,000,000%. If you have the best idea in the world and no editor, the likelihood is it won't reach the heights that it could reach if you had someone to read over for you.
Presumably, yourself and Richard have done some like surface level editing. If you write a book and he'll write a book, and so as it's going out from the two of you, there'll be sort of yeah, this is okay. I really like this bit.
Yeah, when we work together, we probably without realizing it, we're editing it to a certain extent, but it was more so when you realize how in depth you have to go when editing a book and thinking about it. Like we literally started this, Andy, with no knowledge, like literally no knowledge of how to write a comic. We loved them. We loved reading comics, but we didn't really know how to make them. So from day one, from like Monday and Tarik right up until our most recent pieces, we've slowly been learning, going, right, okay, we done this last time. I would like to tweak it a wee bit and add this in. So I think once you think you know everything about comics, you've screwed up. You really
Yeah.
have, because we've been doing this. I think we first started writing 7 or 8 years ago now, and we still know there's tons. Like we spoke to PJ Holden there at the Belfast Comic Con, and the dude knows a million times more than us. And even he'll say you never stop learning. So again, that's one thing, you have to be open to experience and not be afraid to make mistakes. Like I'm not ashamed to say like the stories I've written that could have been a lot better. Only I made mistakes. I done this, I done that. So it's good to have an ego, but not a fragile ego that's going to break when someone points out the mistakes you've made.
That's where the opportunities come in when you realize you haven't learned everything. There's still
Yeah.
broad vistas to come. So I want to move into the publishing aspect of it. In past episodes, I've chatted with Sean Hainsworth of SHP Comics, and we're talking about Phoebe Xavier of 123 Go Publications.
Mm-hmm.
Like yourself, they're Imagineers who triple job as publishers and distributors.
Yeah.
Could you talk us through the structure of strategizing a new book? Does the full script come before choosing an artist? do the two of you have like strategy meetings? How does
Yeah, normally what we would do is even if we're working either independently or together, we tend to work on the script before getting an artist. No, I think I would hate to find an artist and then go, okay, hold on a couple of months until I come up with a script worth your time. So we tend to write the script and have it maybe not finalized, but as close to the finished article as possible before then going and researching artists. It has gotten easier to find artists, as I said. No, from day one we used DeviantArt, and then I think Richard had used a couple of forums either on Facebook or the internet, and that's where he met Slate that done the Vim initiative and stuff. But as I've said to anyone who's come to our table at conventions, Comic Cons are the best place. We met Barry at a Comic Con, we met Reese at a Comic Con. A lot of the people that you'll share an interest with and you'll be able to work with are from our Comic Cons, and if they're local Comic Cons, even better because you can actually speak to the person face to face, which it's not a necessity, but it is nice. It's nice to be able to do that.
you've worked with many different artists? In fact, on each Back Pocket Comics book, or almost each book, there's
Yeah,
a different artist on lead duties. I thought this is maybe a conscious choice, well, to sort of explore cooperation with new people, partnership, but also you're saying to do with the tone of any particular project.
yeah. I think for us personally, it's important to kind of convey the emotions you want in the story. For example, like Sherwin, who done the art for Tarik, his art style wouldn't be really suitable, for example, for the Jovian effect, which is going to be a more realistic, detective style story. So I think it's important that the artist can convey the emotions, the atmosphere of the story. And I wouldn't I've used Reese on a couple of different stories, and obviously the Vim Initiative had the same artist throughout. But I think because, as you said before, we have quite a few different genres, it would be difficult to have the same artist throughout. And for their unless they could change their work entirely to suit the art, I think it would be a conscious decision, for the atmosphere and the feel of the comic to have an artist that basically fits the bill, so to speak.
How have you been impressed by the artists you've worked with? What traits make a great artist and collaborator?
Yeah, I think for an artist, obviously the trust has to be there. As I said, we've been stung a few times where we've paid people and they've disappeared.
Yeah,
So
been
you
there
want
too. Oh,
someone you
nice.
can trust. I think everyone in the kind of industry who has hired an artist or a creator at some point, has probably experienced that to a certain extent. But the kind of the trust aspect that they're not going to disappear on you is a big thing. Being able to meet deadlines is a massive one. Obviously working for ourselves, we aren't too strict, but it can still be quite frustrating if things are a couple of months, 6 months late. Excuse me. One big thing is being able to listen and understand one another. So, obviously we've never had any issues with it, thankfully. But being able to go to the artist and say, right, I've noticed on the storyboard you've done, say, this and that on panels 4 and 5. I was hoping for something more like this. For them, as I said earlier about a writer's ego, artists have egos too. We all have egos. That's why we're in the business. For them to not take it as a personal insult, but to go back and go, okay, no problem. I'll tweak this the way you wanted. So yeah, I think those are probably the three big factors for me. And I'm pretty easy going as a writer. It's like this is what I want. You work away, and as I said, we tend to work with the storyboards then and come up with a compromise that we're both really happy with.
You mentioned like artists doing runners.
Yeah,
Is there? I mean, what have you unlocked any secrets or um, devices? Any devices to keep them on board so that you don't have to go through that?
yeah. Well, I think it is difficult because obviously you want to protect yourself, But at the same time, artists have like it's a job for artists as well. And I know plenty of artists who have been stung by creators in terms of they have given them 20 pages and then the person who has commissioned it has disappeared. So I think at the moment we've been working with people for so long, we're able to have like a select group of people and go, we know this person, we our friend knows this person, we know they're trustworthy. But again, no, I think there's no trade secret. You know, we could get caught again tomorrow. It's impossible to say, but touch wood, we've been lucky enough.
Yeah.
Probably
Friend
from
recommendation does count for a hell of a lot.
a million percent. And again, see going to the likes of the conventions Paul and all create where it is very creator orientated. Those are a godsend. No,
Yeah. Yeah, for those who are maybe a bit outside the industry or Northern Ireland, Paul Trimble runs, and his fantastic team of volunteers
yeah, oh yes,
run the Enniskillen Comics Festival and the one in
oh,
Oma, yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah,
And the onus is very much on comic books and creation. Sure, there might be a few cosplayers hanging around or a few model designers, but comics are kind of Zoom one priority at
yeah.
the heart. What's his catchphrase about that?
Oof. I have a terrible memory. How did you
It's
know this? I
it's
can
all
barely
about the
remember what.
comics. It's all about
No,
the comics.
I
Yeah,
can barely remember the synopsis for our comics, let alone taglines
you've done well so far, Steve.
now.
Um, so uh, the book's been drawn.
Yeah.
Printing. You
Yes.
use Etsy's print on demand service for this?
No, we actually used our first ever one. I think we used Kablam in America, but we didn't realize how expensive shipping them from America would be. So yeah, that was another learning opportunity.
Yeah, I got the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, the actual printing was cheaper than the shipping, believe it or not.
Right.
So it doubled the price of the books, which Richard was not happy with because I was the one who ordered them. So yeah, that was probably the angriest he's been in terms of back pocket comics. He was going to kill me that day. We actually we've used comics to print, but I think they have actually closed now. I don't think they operate. We use Comic Printing UK for our stuff. And again, when we're talking about getting to speak to people, we met the guys at oh my brain is blank today. I'm not going to remember their names.
So many comics events you've attended.
There, there is that's it.
It's
No,
having like a rock star degeneration moment.
I've been having that from I was about 15. My brain's going to be worth mush in about 10 years. Oh, that's going to be bad. We've known the guys from I would say they were very first cons. We met them about 6 years ago, and they suggested going to Comic Printing UK. And the guy Richard who runs it is fantastic. No, he's brilliant. And there's a couple of times we've sent him stuff, and maybe the page scale hasn't been exactly correct, and he'll get in touch and get you to get it to fixed before he actually prints it. So
Yeah, that
it,
was my next question. You get a proof copy, okay?
now the proof copies tend to be digital nowadays. Some places you can pay like an additional fee to get physical copies,
Hmm.
but yeah, we
Right.
tend we tend to get a digital copy and it shows you the lines and these are the bits that'll definitely be cut off and stuff like that. Normally, thankfully, Rich he will point out and say, "Well, actually, say pages 3 to 6, you're going to lose some of the dialogue unless you tweak the page." And he'll give you a heads up so you can alter it before he prints anything.
Right, right. Just big catch in some cases.
Yeah, oh,
So
100%.
you do use Etsy for selling print on demand stuff, but I'm guessing that's sort of the lesser part of your sales. Um,
It is, yeah.
Etsy can release digital comics. I wanted to pull you up because I noticed only Haven Taking the Reins is
Yeah.
available as a PDF. Is that likely to change?
You should, Richard should be here. Richard has created the shop. I'm being quite frank. I tend to do our finances and I book the cons. Richard does social media, emails, and the Etsy store. And I'm very happy for him to do that. I enjoy doing the finances. I enjoy organizing the cons and our accommodation. I am not a social media person. You've seen even trying to correspond via email. I am atrocious at
No,
it.
you've quite good. To be fair now, be fair.
Oh, thank you.
But Richard will get you an early copy of this podcast. You can go and fix that before it goes out.
See how badly I've done it. You've been beating the head off me.
Not at all, not at all. So yeah, distribution and festivals and festivals are a bit of a hobby horse of mine. But
Yeah.
first, the Northern Irish comic scene is seems to me in an odd state of change. At least that's what it says in this bit of paper
Right.
I have in
Okay.
front of me. Are your books stocked with any shops in the province?
Yes, we are at Comic Guys in
Great
Belfast.
guys,
Yep.
Victoria Street. Yep.
Yep, that's it. And Buzzard in Newry.
Cool.
And we are at the Angry Cherry in
Angry Cherry and Derry.
Newry. We are. And then Forbidden Planet in Dublin has some as well.
Right. We'll have to put a link up to all those shops for their concern. Can you tell us a bit about Buzzard Comics in Derry and sorry, in
Newry.
Newry? I sometimes feel that in Belfast we can be a bit like capital centric, like in any
Yeah.
capital, or
Yeah.
like it's all about us, man. But
Well,
what's happening in the comic shop in your neighborhood?
oh well, Newry, like no, it would probably we're in Portadown, so it's about 20 minutes maybe to Newry, and it's about 30 to Belfast. So I think the thing with him, it feels like same as actually all three of those stores. It's like you're going into your friend's house. The guys greet you. They're really inviting. You don't even have to talk about comics. Like, no, you can talk about anything. No, I think that's one thing our comic shops have in comparison to like the massive, like the proper massive ones, is that the guys have time to talk to you.
Yeah.
And they will gladly talk to you for half an hour about anything, even if you're only buying one book. And you've been to our table plenty of times. I can talk. So I appreciate that. No, I appreciate being able to chat to guys.
That's totally the difference between a good comic shop and a shop.
Yeah, there's been other shops that they haven't been quite as inviting, and I won't name that shop, but I quite like the fact Buzzard, you can go in, you can say hey. I think Richard would go there quite regularly, and the two of them get on superbly well. And again, like when I work for TransLink, so when I'm in Belfast, I would call in every now and again to comic guys. I haven't been in a while actually. I'll have to call in another hour in a wee bit, but no, they're great guys. Like no, I think we were meant to have a signing day at the Angry Cherry there prior to COVID hitting. We didn't end up getting it. Was actually for Black Spot. That's how long ago it was. But because of COVID, they had to cancel things. But those guys are great too. Like no, all four of the stores, because Barry actually works in the one in Dublin, the guy who drew pipelines. So there's not a single one of those stores you couldn't go into and have a chat with the guys and enjoy it.
You're both fixture on the Comics Festival circuit in Northern Ireland. By and large, I mean, I've seen you there every time I've been at one.
Yeah.
I see the same people at the conventions behind the tables
Yeah.
and out front often. So that takes some steadfastness and some commitment.
Yeah.
Events like these are a popular way of launching new releases, or at least they're a key point of access. Do you see consumers returning to your books and other people's books in this kind of seasonal manner? I mean, are they like me that they may be very, very choosy with their choices and their money? Or do folks pick up certain new releases from most creative publishers?
I can only really speak for us, honestly. And we find that a lot of the time, guys will come down and go, "Oh, have you got anything new this year? I have X, Y, and Z." And literally anything that you've released that they haven't got, they'll buy, which is amazing. No, there's no better feeling than kind of getting that little boost of the ego that someone's willing to, as you said, no, they're willing to spend their money on your product. And it does, it's nice. It's a bit of an ego massage knowing that someone finds your product worth their while. So, yeah, I think it's important to bring in new customers because obviously you need to sell the stuff that everyone else has bought prior. But no, I think in our experience we have return custom, which is amazing to see. It's brilliant. And Richard, he's great at faces, so he recognized them from 100 meters away. Oh, that's such and such. We sold them this. Like, how the hell do you remember all this stuff?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no,
That's a
he's
skill in
amazing.
itself.
Oh, 100%. He's a godsend. He know names and everything. Is like fantastic. Now I don't have
If
to guess.
Yeah, I can't be put off doing like selling at conventions because I'd want like everybody that comes in to wear a name badge so I can remember them from 6 months
It
before.
would be a hell of a lot easier. It really would. No.
So I think the convention thing is an odd thing, at least it is for me. So you're there as retailers with a certain amount of performance required.
Yeah.
You're expected to talk to everyone you can to make a sale or make a memory for a future sale. And of course, you want to connect with people on a social level.
Yeah.
So you're balancing being colorful creatives with behind desk retailers.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's not for everyone.
It takes some getting used to be quite honest. We have, I don't know if you would call it a good or a bad strategy, but we tend to approach it the same how we like to be treated when we're at conventions. So a lot of the time, again, you've seen us at most of the cons I've been to. I'll be sitting swinging on the seat or looking around me like a child, and we don't bully people. People come over to us and they start when they want to talk, we'll talk. But a lot of the time, like, hey guys, anything you like the look of, please take a look. If you want to know anything, give me a shout, and we'll just kind of chill out, and then they'll talk because there's nothing. I detest pushy sales. And even if I really wanted the comic and someone tried to force me into buying it, I just wouldn't buy it. So we've taken the complete opposite approach of people having to chase us to buy the comics, and it works, Andy. It works being that laid back.
I've always felt now this might be a bit of a harsh or ugly thing to say, and and it is crude generalization completely that um people who buy comics can be a bit odd. They can have certain mental health hangups. And that's a ridiculously I should be struck off the podcasters agenda for saying that. But
Well,
there are people who appreciate you being bold and who appreciate you just being laid back and
yeah,
until you talk to them.
yeah.
So I had always found it a bit of a gamble. Do you sort of how much do you engage
Yeah,
unless otherwise engaged?
I think kind of because this is something that we've discussed, and I wouldn't say we set out to do this, but most of the time, as you say, you've got your two types. You have your talkers, and for me personally, I when I go to conventions, I'm a looker. I'll look around the tables. If I like something, I want to pick it up and look at it without you don't even need to talk to me. I'll read the synopsis on the back. I'll look at the pages, then I'll buy it. So we've kind of come to the conclusion that if you sit back, the people that want to talk will talk to you. They'll start the conversation. The people that don't really want to talk may ask for a brief synopsis of the story or even just a price, excuse me, and then they'll buy it. So I think by not being overly engaging, you actually everyone kind of benefits then, and you let the kind of I want to say cost. There's bound to be a better word, but you let the customer dictate your kind of pitch if that makes sense. The customer will dictate whether you do a lot of talking or whether you just kind of chill out and
Yeah,
let them do their own thing.
yeah, that's a good answer. Digital stores, physical stores, conventions. Are there other ways that we could be doing it? Is there a better model or a fairer model for getting work to readers?
See, I think this is the tough part because getting your comics in stores is okay, but a lot of the graphic novels from like Marvel, DC, Image will be in around the same price as indie comics for the most part. So the difficulty is you're basically asking a customer or a customer to one of these comic stores to instead of buying a Marvel comic or a DC comic or an Image comic, to take a gamble and a risk on completely unknown. So there are the likes those three stores I mentioned. They do tend to have indie sections, and they will promote it. Which again, you can't tell like people. This is other people's businesses. They have to run their shop whatever way is profitable. But see, from like an indie creator's perspective, it's a godsend having stores like that that really
Oh,
do push
yes.
and like really support the indie kind of indie scene. So I don't know if there's a cheat code or an easy way to do it. Personally, I prefer hard copies of comics. So conventions were the main thing for me. Like Richard and I've been to New York Comic Con a few times, and it's unholy the amount of comics I've brought home from people I've never known of before, never met before. But it's amazing just getting to talk to other creators and seeing how awesome some of the work is that they put together. So conventions for me, Andy, is the best. You know, people get to talk to you, they get to see your work, and for me, that's the best way to kind of promote your product, basically.
I'm just thinking about how North and South Ireland kind of differ in their comic scenes and their sort of approach to getting books in readers' hands. I mean, I think here in the North we're a little pedestrian at times. You go to a comic show in Dublin, there will be comics sold in amongst like organic cakes and woolens. There will be film nights at cafes where comics launches are done. It seems a lot more varied and a lot more part of other cultures.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a big thing, though. Even in terms of conventions, there seem to be quite a lot more down south, obviously, than up here. But it's the beauty about living in Armagh. We're kind of in the middle to a certain extent. So Dublin's an hour and a half away. Belfast is half an hour away. Even if you remember the convention that used to be in Derry, no, you're again that's about an hour and a half away. So Rich and I don't really mind driving 90 minutes, especially the convention. So no, it is hard. Like it is hard to promote to a certain extent. And when you see, like, I have a couple of friends in America that create comics and stuff. Excuse me, and the amount of conventions you could do over there is just it's unbelievable. But no, I think at the moment we're quite content. No, there's quite enough like in the whole island, no north and south, to keep us entertained. And we're hoping maybe to get over the mainland, England, kind of Scotland direction next year and see how we get on there. We've done it a couple of times pre-COVID, so we're hoping to spread our wings a wee bit, get back over again.
Right, which ones have you been to? What's cooking over
Well,
on the mainland?
We've done Scotland now. No, it was good. It was good. So it was no the again the people were great. I think for next year we're talking either I think it was Manchester or Wales. We were hoping, but
Manchester
again,
has a great history as a self-publishing city. So and there's a good cluster of indie comics creators. So
see
heck, I
that
might even do Manchester with you and go drinking with my
good
old
stuff.
friends.
Well, that's it. Like, no, I think if I had my way, I would probably go completely balls to the wall and do 25 conventions a year. Whereas Richard kind of holds you back a wee bit and he's like, use your brain for once. No, let's start off at 10 and see how we get on, kind of thing. And I do think there is definitely a happy medium there between sprinting flat out and taking a leisurely stroll. So, no, I think next year that's the aim. Maybe one at a push, two if I can convince Richard over England, no Manchester, Scotland, Wales, maybe. But for the most part, we're booked in for the Mega Con Live in January down in the RDS. Next year, we've got booked in for it. Actually, we should hopefully be hearing back from Dublin Comic Con in March tonight, whether we've been accepted to that or not. So hopefully that'll be two cons in the first 3 months in 23. Fingers crossed,
Plan for 2023, you mentioned the Jovian effect. As I understand it, a dark and gritty style, detective style graphic novel written by yourself, drawn by Anne Andre Lunatic.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Um, your inker is
yeah. I say
Kepler
Cooper. Yeah,
Perchina.
it's not the easiest to pronounce, like, but he's an awesome inker, so I can live with that.
Gus Mendez colors, Josh Southall letters, and
Yeah,
Richard editing.
yeah. Richard has been a godsend for this story. I fell in love with the concept and the idea, but Richard has tweaked the strings in the background, and the story is so much. See, when I look back at the original draft I had written and what I ended up going with, Richard has been invaluable. Don't tell him that because I'll owe him a fortune at this rate, but it has been a godsend having him at know to help with it.
You have to cut that out. It's quite it. I thought initially the Jovian effect it sounded very sci-fi, but you've got a detective style
Yeah,
thing. What's your I don't know how much we can really talk about this without doing giveaways. It's a bit too early for that, but like, where is it coming from? What's the sort of the tone?
the Jovian effect actually, it's two things. And while Reese was working on Terminus, I noticed his style become a wee bit more realistic. And at the same time, I had the Spawn omnibus, which I was reading through at the time, and obviously Sam and Twitch, the detectives. I was really enjoying reading their stuff, and I was like, Reese's styles got more realistic. I'm really enjoying reading the Sam and Twitch bits of this, and the more I thought about it, I come up with like my own kind of detective, like 4 volume story. I was like, I would actually really, really, really love to do a detective story. So I come up with a couple of bad guys, come up with a couple of twists, and it just all started to come together. All like there's going to end up hopefully all like 4 volumes, and it just all started to come together from beginning to end. And then getting Richard on as a full, like a proper full time editor, basically on it, it just all ended up perfect. Getting the team I got together, just all in all, was just fantastic. And then I got a few like professional artists to do some covers. Kevin Keane, who you would know from Rogue Comics,
Yeah.
he has done like a series of covers for it too. So there'll be like a version with his cover, which again you've seen his artwork. It's terrifyingly good. So I'm glad I got him before like he actually makes it like he's on Spawn and everything now. So he'll be living in LA
Oh.
no doubt shortly.
Terminus is the next one, a quasi-religious lore revelation style story with a
Yeah.
twist. As you said, it's drawn by Reese. It's both yourself and Richard on the writing. What more can you tell us about Terminus? It's 3 issues.
Yes, it is just I wrote Terminus, and Richard has added it to a certain extent, not as much as he's added it to Jovian effect, but he would have checked it over to a certain extent. Yes, it was going to be 3 issues, and then obviously because of COVID and everything, issue 1 couldn't be released. Then issue 2 was just at this stage we may as well just make it a 3 chapter graphic novel. So that's what we've
Okay.
decided to do. And yeah, that's pretty much the story. I wanted to kind of take the Revelation story. Didn't want to use just God and Satan characters, so I kind of rebranded them, as terrible as that is, and added in basically a third deity and tweaked the kind of story, created my own wee background story on how all of this actually manifested and come to be. I've had this story, Andy. I think I decided on this story. It must have been a good 5 years ago, but I had like a folder of like just stories that I had written and set to the side. And during COVID, it came out, and I decided to make a start on it. And yeah, it was lucky enough. Reese was on hand, and again, we're all trapped in our houses, so there wasn't a whole lot better to do. So no, luckily Reese got on board and drew all the pages, and then we had Gus as well. No, Gus has worked on a few stories now for me, and the guy, he's super reliable, has the work done, and he's just fantastic to work with. And again, Josh, you'll probably have gathered I have the same kind of background team for the most part. Josh, I've worked with, I think, from as far back as Tarik. And no, he's great. No, I've loved working with Josh.
Yeah, and you sent me over previews of the art for the whole thing and the first issue lettered, and it really is looking like a lot of fun. That you have this, as you say, it's a quasi-religious characters, and you're playing about with various interpretations of those, and looks
Yeah.
quite fun. So Terminus is going to be crowdfunded, and that should be launched by the time this interview airs. I'll put a link in the description. So there have been 5 Kickstarter projects so far for Back Pocket Comics.
Yeah.
It should be said, crowdfunding is not easy. You've kind of had mixed results. Why do you think you have failed and succeeded?
Yeah, I think our 2 failures were quite early. I think there were 2 of the first 3 kind of things we've done. And what I feel we had missed a trick on at the start was promoting. We had only really launched the Back Pocket Comic kind of brand. We didn't have many followers on social media. We didn't really, our self promotion is a disgrace, to be quite honest. No, we were like, this is like, we've been running 6 years, and I think this is one of, like, we've interviewed with Andrew Fee, the last one you were talking about with David and stuff, and yourself. We probably should invest more in ourselves and organize more podcasts and more meetings. But we were kind of under the misconception that if you launched a Kickstarter, it was kind of like the field of dreams, no, make it and they will come kind of thing. Doesn't work that way. You actually have to put the hard work in behind the scenes. And we didn't do that, especially for Monday. I think for the Vim that failed, our figures were off. Though we were trying to sell the product at a fair price, basically, but our target would have needed like over 100, 150 backers. And it's quite a lot for a brand that isn't established, and for someone who didn't have enough followers. So I think for the other, what was it, Tarik, Black Spot, and Heyman were the 3, like our 3 good successes. We kind of realized, we need more tiers, we need better tiers, we need to actually promote it. That's quite important apparently when you're crowdfunding. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Believe it or not, Andy, it is important to to do that stuff. But no, we done that, and we do tend to have quite low targets to begin with. But thankfully, we met those well. Like, so, again, it's like making comics where there's times we're going to trip up, we're going to fall, and it is frustrating when you do fail to hit that target. But if you can learn from it and come back and do it better, it's going to make for a better product at the end of the day.
so what's likely to be coming up or is planned on the currently running Terminus Kickstarter? Is more options, stretch goals?
Yes, stretch goals I'm still working on. In terms of the tiers, we're going to have a PDF tier, a paperback tier, and then we're going to do like a paperback with a print. Reese has done a couple of basic comic book sized images. So there's going to be that tier. Then there's going to be another tier where Reese will be doing like a custom sketch of either the characters, something along those lines. And then another tier above that where you can get the sketch and the print. And then we're playing along with the idea of maybe doing a retail tier where businesses, hopefully, because I think Angry Cherry backed us last time, they can actually get in a few comics, like get their own kind of stock of it in, which would be amazing as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So that's basically it. No, I think it's important to kind of to go through successful Kickstarters and again learn from people that are better than you or have been more successful in the field than you. No, there's no shame in turning around and saying you're learning from people who have succeeded in their field because there's a reason they succeeded. So me personally, I've went on to Kickstarters that have done well, looked at how they were laid out, but personally, I think the main thing is how you promote it, and that is a massive learning curve. I'm still trying to figure my way around that. To be quite honest with you.
Yeah, when Phoebe was on the previous episode, she talked about like going around and direct messaging
Yeah,
everybody, everybody, and then on her following crowdfund, when that wasn't done, the numbers went way down. And I think what sort of annoys me about the experts and the gurus is they all kind of say the same thing, which seems to me like incredibly, terribly boring. But you know what's even more boring is the fact that they're right.
That is the frustrating thing. Like, there's no sure way of doing it, but there are definitely ways where you can amplify your chances of success.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Again, as I've said before, social media, it's not my strong suit. But if you want to do well in the industry, I think Terminus, I'll definitely try, but because Jovian Effect, I'm hoping to launch it in May next year. I literally have a list of things. I'm like, right, this is everything I'm going to target to do, and I'm super lazy. See if it's stuff like, yourself. This isn't the fun side of comics. It's the hard slog. It's the sending emails to hundreds of companies. But see if I have a list of stuff to do. I'm too stubborn to let that slide. So I will then go on and go, right, I have to do this. I must do this. Especially if Richard's behind me, with the whole "I told you so" attitude. I can't deal with that. He's too smug for my liking, so I can't deal with that.
So crowdfunder should be running in December, maybe over by a year. And then what sort of timetable are you talking about sending people out copies or project being wrapped?
Currently, I've sent you everything we have currently. So far, chapter one's complete, and chapter two, I just have to finalize the dialogue and send it to Josh. So by the time the campaign ends, that should be complete. And with Rich printing, he's very efficient. He's very good. So I would be hoping if it was to close at the end, like say for example the end of this year, I would expect it to be in people's hands probably by the end of February at the latest. That would be conservative. I hate saying like I've backed stuff on
Yeah.
Kickstarter and have said, oh, you'll definitely get it in February, and it's maybe November by the time it arrives, and it's a pet hate of mine. I would rather someone said you're not getting it to November, and it arrives in March. So all being well, if everything were to go according to plan, people would have it in their hands by February at the latest.
Yeah, you gotta stay loose till February. And then for Jovian Effect, what did you say, May?
Yes, I am aiming for May for it. So again, hopefully we'll be able to chat about it in more detail, and I'll send you the whole thing when it's finished. But it is it's 4 chapters. Again, that was a discussion Richard and I had, as though when he started the editing process. I had originally planned to do it in 16 issues, and he basically said it was probably better to do it in volumes because, again, in the indie scene, getting someone to support 16-issue run, it isn't the easiest accomplishment, as you're aware.
Yeah, we're a bit more fickle than we used to be.
So I thought, right, okay, so instead of doing it's 4 issues per volume. So my whole concept anyway was each arc to be 4 issues. So it worked out absolutely perfectly. So Andre, he's finished his bit. He's biting at the bit to start volume 2, but I'm still trying to get friggin' everything sorted for that. And again, Coupler, he has nearly inked everything. Gus has inked up to chapter 3. So everything's going in the right direction. I'm hoping to have it complete by the end of the year as well. And then I can obviously send it to yourself and other people and try my best to promote this one like a professional.
Here, Stephen, thanks very much for talking to us. Thanks for giving your time today. It's been a pleasure and hopefully a profit.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. No, that was good fun. I enjoyed that. No, so hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well with Terminus, and then we can talk again at a later date about the Jovian effect. Hopefully,
Super duper. And if you're listening to the show, go over and see Stephen and Richard. They're just great people to engage with. Social media. Well, final challenging question.
yes.
Etsy.com/, just search Back Pocket Comics.
Literally, what I was about to say.
Facebook.
If you go onto Etsy and search Back Pocket Comics, you will find us. Same as Facebook and Instagram. I think we have a Twitter now as well, actually. But I don't have Twitter, so Richard deals with all that. But I think it's Backpocket Comics with an X rather than a CS. I think, but I'll get back to you with that one.
We'll get that link in the description. Yeah. All
No,
right.
Richard deals with all that, and I avoid it. Otherwise, he's going to make me do more work, and I try not to do that if I can help it.
Work's not that great. All right. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Right, Andy. Take care, sir. Thank
Cheers.
you.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Drew and Luke podcast, please check out our archives. There's a collection of audio essays, essentially, on everything from Mutant Enemy, Baywatch Nights, Always Sunny, The Shield, The New Universe, Justice League, and Transformers comics by James Roberts, Stephen Moffat's Press Gang. We're pretty big, some pretty broad coverage. This podcast is made possible by my patrons on patreon.com/Andy Luke, where every month I share commentaries, exclusive creative content, and early previews of this podcast and my other one, I've Never Read Discworld. Or you can check out my fantastic novel, Occupied, by Andy Luke on Amazon, which is a result of about 4 or 5 years' work. It's a situation comedy set within the Occupy movement in Belfast. And I'll see you all next month, hopefully.